ballroom sparkled like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, throwing light onto tables set with fresh flowers and perfect white tablecloths. A string quartet played soft music, the kind that makes you feel fancy and relaxed. Guests, dressed up nice in their best clothes, talked and laughed quietly over glasses of wine and little plates of food. It was exactly the kind of party you'd expect from a family like mine, a family that built its name and money right here in New York. I stood near the entrance, just inside the big double doors, greeting everyone as they arrived. I put on my warmest smile for each person, shaking hands, giving hugs. My navy blue dress was simple but fit just right, making me feel put together. My brown hair was curled softly and fell around my shoulders. My eyes, big and deep, probably looked happy, but inside, they were hiding a secret, a heavy one. To anyone looking, I was the perfect hostess, paying attention to everyone, looking radiant, and totally in love with the night we were celebrating, 5 years of being married to James. But inside, my heart wasn't just pounding, it was hammering against my ribs. I knew what James was planning. The knowing had been a cold knot in my stomach for weeks. I'd found out little by little, hearing careless words he thought I didn't catch, seeing sneaky moves on his computer screen, noticing papers that didn't look right. It all fit together like a dark puzzle. The long nights he wasn't home, the lies he told that he tried to cover up with that charming smile. I knew this night, the one he'd promised would be unforgettable, wasn't about celebrating us. It was just the stage he'd set for a public put-down he'd planned out carefully, wanting to make me look small in front of everyone we knew. Across the room, James was doing what he did best, working the crowd. He had a group of guests hanging on his every word, laughing at his jokes. Tall, good-looking, with that easy confidence, he just gave off a feeling of being in charge. He wore a sharp black suit that probably cost more than some people make in a year, and his green eyes had the look of a man who thinks he's got the world on a string. Laughter rang out as he told some simple story, his voice carrying that smooth, arrogant edge only I had learned to spot behind his charming act. He was so good at pretending, at making people believe whatever he wanted them to. I watched him from across the room, feeling a mix of cold anger and a strange calm. For years, James had built this perfect picture of himself, this image of the ideal husband, the smart businessman, the loving partner. But tonight, when he thought it would be his big moment to finally get rid of me and take everything, I knew everything was about to change in a way he never saw coming. When the clock on the wall hit 9, James raised his glass, tapping it lightly with a fork to get everyone's attention. The soft music faded, and the room went quiet right away. All eyes turned to him as he walked up to the small stand set up for speeches, a spotlight hitting him just right. He looked like he was ready to accept an award, not drop a bomb. "My dear friends, family, honored guests," he started, his voice warm and loud enough for everyone to hear, sounding so sincere it made my skin crawl. "It's an honor to have you all here tonight, celebrating such a special time with us, here in our home." I kept my smile on, fixed in place, but my stomach felt tight, like a fist was squeezing it. The way he could lie so easily, how he could fool everyone with his words, with that look in his eyes. It was almost something to see, if it wasn't so awful. "Today we celebrate 5 years of marriage," James went on, pausing for effect, letting the words hang in the air. 5 years that have been, without a doubt, a journey full of learning, growth, and yes, challenges. Guests nodded along, some smiling softly, like they were sharing a private, understanding moment with us, with the idea of marriage itself. They had no idea what was coming, but James wasn't done with his act. "However," he added, his voice changing a little, losing some of its warmth, becoming more serious, "I also think it's important, especially among those closest to us, to be honest. Tonight, I want to open my heart with you, truly." A ripple of whispers went through the room, like a little wave. Couples looked at each other, curious, maybe a little worried, and the smiles started to fade from people's faces. I held my glass tight, feeling the first bit of real, hot anger bubbling under my skin. He was enjoying this. He was enjoying the suspense, the attention. "This marriage," James said, letting the words drop slowly, with a dramatic pause between them, like he was making a big, important announcement, "has been a valuable experience. It's taught me a lot. But, as many of you who know us well might understand, sometimes relationships reach a point where it's better, for everyone involved, to go our separate ways." The whispers turned into gasps, shocked sounds, little cries of surprise. Some guests leaned forward in their chairs, like they hadn't heard him right, or couldn't believe what they were hearing. People's faces were full of pure shock and confusion. Some women covered their mouths with their hands. Others just stared at me, their eyes wide, waiting to see what I would do, how I would react to being hit with this in front of everyone. But I didn't move, not a muscle. No tears welled up in my eyes. No scream tore from my throat. Just the sound of my breathing, steady and controlled, even though my heart was beating like a drum. James, standing there, waiting to see me fall apart, waiting for the tears, the public breakdown he'd planned on, stayed standing tall. But something inside him, deep down, must have known things weren't going exactly his way. My lack of reaction wasn't what he expected. Then, I stood up. It was so sudden, so quiet, that everyone in the room turned to look at me at once. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken questions. My back was straight, my head held high. My face was calm, almost expressionless, showing a strength that didn't match someone who should be falling apart after hearing her marriage was over in front of 100 people. I walked slowly towards the middle of the room, towards James, my heels clicking softly on the polished marble floor, the sound echoing in the sudden quiet. James watched me come closer, his confident look starting to crack, replaced by confusion and a hint of worry. He expected tears, a scene, maybe even begging him to stop, to not do this. But what he saw was something totally different. A woman who looked like she was walking towards him to take charge, not to plead. I stopped right in front of him, close enough to see the surprise in his green eyes. I lifted my chin slightly, and with a small, knowing smile on my lips, a smile that didn't reach my eyes, I spoke. "James," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the quiet room like a knife. It was calm, but everyone could hear the steel underneath. "You seem very sure of yourself tonight, very confident in your plans, but I'm going to remind you of something important, something you seem to have forgotten. I never lose what is already rightfully mine." My words hit him hard. James blinked, his smile completely gone now. His face went pale. The whispers among the guests started getting louder again, faster, more urgent. They didn't understand, but they knew something big was happening, something James hadn't planned for. I turned slightly to face everyone, picking up a glass of champagne from a nearby table, my hand not shaking at all. "To us," I said, my voice full of sarcasm, raising the glass just a little. "May this night truly be unforgettable. For everyone." I took a slow sip of the champagne, feeling its coldness. Then, I put the glass down carefully and walked out of the room with firm, steady steps, not looking back. The silence I left behind didn't last. It turned into a storm of feelings and questions for the guests. What did my words mean? How did I know what James was planning? How did I stay so calm when he tried to embarrass me in front of everyone we knew? The answers, I thought, as I stepped out into the cool New York night air, the city lights twinkling in the distance, would change everything. Not just for James, but for me too. The grand ballroom was behind me now, the sounds of shocked whispers fading as I walked away. I stopped outside on the wide stone patio, letting the night breeze touch my face. It felt good, cool and clean after the stuffy tension inside. Every step I took leaving the party, leaving the whispers and confused stares, played in my mind like a movie. But this feeling, this need to be strong when things were falling apart, wasn't new. I'd faced unsure times before. Tonight wouldn't be any different. I wouldn't let it break me. I looked up at the sky over the city. The stars were just tiny pinpricks of light, blinking down, not caring one bit about the drama happening in my life, in my marriage. My thoughts started going back in time, to the moment it all began, to the night I met James. It was on a night just like this one, clear and full of stars, though the air was warmer then. It happened at a big party my family threw every year, a fancy gala to raise money for a charity my mother cared about deeply. It was the kind of event where the dresses were sparkling, the lights were bright, and the lively talk and laughter all tried to grab your attention at once. I was used to those nights, had been going to them since I was a teenager, but this one felt different from the start. And then I saw him. James. He stood out in the crowd, not just because he was tall and good-looking, which he definitely was, but because of how he moved through the room. He was comfortable, easy, like he belonged there, even though I knew he didn't come from this world of old money and big business names. He walked right up to me, cutting through a small group I was talking to, with a confident smile that seemed to light up his face. "Are you Vivian?" he asked, his voice smooth and friendly. "Yes, I am," I answered, a little surprised by his directness. "And you don't seem scared by all this," I said, gesturing around the crowded fancy room. "Scared? Not at all," he answered, his green eyes twinkling with a little bit of fun, a challenge. Though I have to admit, there's something in this room that does make me a little nervous. "Oh, what would that be?" I asked, raising an eyebrow, curious despite myself. Most guys I met at these things either acted too shy or tried too hard. James was different. "Talking to you," he said simply, his smile softening just a bit. "Because you're not like the others here. You can tell just by looking at you, by the way you carry yourself, that you have something special, something more than just a famous last name and a big house." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. It was a good line, maybe even a practiced one, but there was something about James that felt real in that moment. He wasn't just saying what he thought I wanted to hear. He seemed genuinely interested. "Okay," I said, smiling back at him. "That's a good line, a very good one. But I have to admit, it worked." That was the start of everything. We talked for hours that night, standing by the big windows, looking out at the city lights, about everything and nothing. He listened when I talked about my dreams for the family business, the company my father, Charles, had built from nothing through years of hard work and smart decisions. He shared his own dreams, big and bold, about making his mark on the world. He wasn't afraid of my family's money or power. He seemed genuinely interested in me, in my thoughts, my ideas, my feelings. We started seeing each other after that night. Dates in Central Park, walking for hours and just talking. Quiet dinners downtown in little restaurants where nobody knew us. Late night talks on the phone that lasted until the sun started to come up. He was charming, smart, and made me feel like I was the most interesting, most beautiful woman in the world. He made me feel seen. My mother, Susan, watched him closely. She came from a different world than my father, one with old money, old families, and strict rules about who you married and how things were done. She liked James. He was polite and seemed successful. But I remember her saying once, her voice quiet, He's very ambitious, Vivian. That's not a bad thing, but make sure you know what drives him. What he really wants. At the time, I thought it was just motherly worry. The kind all mothers have. I told myself James was driven by his love for me, by a desire to build a life with me. After about a year, James asked me to marry him. It was perfect, just like out of a movie, on a rooftop overlooking the glittering New York skyline at sunset. He got down on one knee, said all the right things. I said yes without a second thought, my heart full. My family welcomed him, though my father, Charles, always the businessman, always seeing things others missed, had a different kind of look in his eye when he talked about James. He's got a sharp mind, Vivian, Dad told me one day, not long after the engagement was announced. We were in his study, a room filled with the smell of old books and the quiet history of the company. Papers and charts were spread out on his big desk. Very sharp. He learns fast, sees opportunities. That kind of intelligence can build great things, build empires, or it can be dangerous if it's not guided right. If the person using it doesn't have a good heart, a strong moral compass. I didn't fully understand what he meant then. I thought he was just giving me business advice, warning me to be careful in partnerships. I just saw the man I loved, the man who made me happy, ready to start a life with me, ready to join the family business and help me carry on my father's amazing legacy. I trusted James completely. It was a trust he would later break into a million sharp pieces, pieces that would cut deep. Life felt good after we got married and settled into the big house. James joined the company, just like we planned. He was quick to learn everything, full of energy and new ideas. He seemed to really get how the business worked, how Dad had built it step by step. Dad seemed impressed, even if he kept that careful, watchful look in his eye sometimes when James was talking business. Things were settling into a nice, comfortable rhythm. We were building our life, our future, together. Then, everything changed, suddenly and completely. My father, Charles, got sick. It happened fast, like a storm rolling in without warning. One day he was at the office, sharp as ever, making deals, leading meetings. The next, he was in the hospital, weak and tired. It was a shock that shook our family to its core. The business, the company that was the center of our family's life, the thing Dad had poured his whole life into, suddenly felt heavy and scary. It was supposed to be my future, my responsibility, but I felt completely unprepared. During that awful time, my world shrunk down to the hospital room, the quiet, worried house, and the blur of doctors' faces. My grief started even before he was gone. I felt lost, like the ground had disappeared under my feet. James was right there through it all. He was strong for me, for my mother. He sat with me for hours in the hospital waiting room, held my hand, told me not to worry about anything else, especially not the business. "Let me handle the company, Vivian," he said, his voice gentle and reassuring. "Your place is here, with your father. You focus on him, on yourself, on getting through this. I'll make sure everything at the company is okay. I'll keep things running smoothly. Your dad trusted me, didn't he? He brought me into the business, taught me things. I can do this for him, for you." He was right. Dad had trusted him. He had brought him in, shown him the ropes. And in my grief, feeling overwhelmed and unable to think clearly, I trusted James even more. It felt like a huge relief, honestly. I couldn't think straight, couldn't deal with board meetings, numbers, and tough decisions. My mind was just full of worry and sadness about my father. So I let him. I signed papers he put in front of me, trusting they were just routine things needed to keep the business going. He took over talking to the lawyers, the bank, the top managers. He was the strong one, the one keeping things together while I was falling apart, lost in my sorrow. It started small, so small I barely noticed at first. Decisions about projects I hadn't heard about before. New people hired in important positions that I didn't know or hadn't met. When I asked James about them, he always had an answer ready, quick and smooth. "Just streamlining things, Vivian," he'd say, giving me that charming smile that used to melt my heart. "Making things more efficient, cutting out the old ways that slow us down. You don't need to worry your pretty head about the details right now. It's complicated stuff. You've got enough on your plate with your father." And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He seemed so confident, so in control, so sure of what he was doing. He was protecting me, I thought. Taking the burden off my shoulders so I could grieve and be with my family. My mother, Susan, was also dealing with Dad's illness, and later, his death. She relied on James, too, seeing him as the capable man who was stepping up to lead the family business in a difficult time, the man who would take care of me. But looking back now, with clear eyes, that's exactly when it really began. That's when James started to make his move. Quietly, carefully. While I was lost in sorrow, blinded by my grief and my trust in him, he was busy changing things in the company, busy moving money around, busy setting things up behind the scenes, busy making sure that when the time came, he wouldn't just be my husband, the man who married into the family, but the one truly in charge, the one who owned everything. I was too blinded by grief and trust to see the truth then. I just accepted his explanations. Grateful he was there. Grateful he was handling things. But the changes kept happening. Slowly. Quietly. Like termites eating away at the wood. Chipping away at the foundation of everything my father had built and left to me. After Dad passed away, the heavy fog of grief slowly started to lift, little by little. But it left me feeling empty and strangely disconnected. Disconnected from the business that was my birthright, from the life I used to know. James was fully in charge now, or so it seemed. He spent more and more time at the office, traveled a lot for business trips that seemed to pop up out of nowhere. His explanations for everything became smoother, too smooth, like he'd practiced them. That's when I started noticing things that just didn't quite add up. Little things at first. Papers left open on his desk when he stepped out, showing numbers or names I didn't recognize. Phone calls he took in private, speaking in low voices, ending quickly when I walked into the room. Business deals mentioned by old family friends or people who worked at the company, big deals, important changes that I knew absolutely nothing about, even though I was supposed to be the owner, the one in charge after my father. It wasn't just streamlining anymore, like he'd said. These were big changes, major shifts in how the company worked, how money moved, who was in power. I started asking more questions, not just simple ones like before, but pointed ones. "James, what is this contract for? It looks like we're selling off a big part of the company." Or, "Why are we selling that property downtown?" Dad always said it was key to our future plans. His charming smile would get a little tight around the edges. His eyes would lose that warm twinkle and get cold. He'd get annoyed, his voice sharp. "Vivian, I told you, I'm handling things. It's complicated business stuff, mergers and acquisitions. You wouldn't understand the details. It's for the best interest of the company." Or worse, he'd turn it back on me, making me feel guilty. "Why are you questioning me like this? Don't you trust me? After everything I've done for you, for your family, while you were grieving?" That question, "Don't you trust me?" It hit hard every time. For so long, I had trusted him completely, with my heart, with my life, with my father's legacy. But the way he asked it now, it wasn't about trust at all. It was about control. It was a way to shut me down, to make me feel like I was being difficult, or stupid, or ungrateful for even asking. It was emotional manipulation, plain and simple. And then, like a light turning on in a dark room, I remembered my father's words. "He's got a sharp mind, Vivian. That kind of intelligence can build great things. Or it can be dangerous, if it's not guided right. If the person using it doesn't have a good heart." Dad wasn't just giving me business advice. He was seeing something deeper in James, something about his character, his ambition, that I didn't want to see then because I was in love. He saw the potential for James's intelligence to be used for harm, for selfish gain. It hit me like a physical blow, a cold, hard punch to the gut. James wasn't protecting me. He wasn't helping me carry on Dad's legacy. He was stealing it. He was using my grief, my trust, my love, the fact that I was overwhelmed and vulnerable, to slowly, quietly, take control of everything my family owned, everything my father had worked his entire life to build. He was building his empire on the foundation my father built, the one that was supposed to be mine, my responsibility, my future. The realization was cold and hard, like a stone. I felt foolish, incredibly stupid for being so blind, so easily fooled. I felt a deep, burning sense of betrayal, a hurt that went right to my soul. But I didn't let it show. I learned to hide it. I learned to smile, to nod, to act like the dutiful wife who didn't understand business, who was happy to let her smart husband handle everything. I played the part he expected me to play. But secretly, quietly, I started to plan. I knew I couldn't confront him without solid proof. He was too good at lying, at twisting things, at making me doubt myself and my own sanity. I needed help, someone I could trust completely. I thought of Daniel. Daniel had been my father's longtime assistant, his right-hand man for decades. He had been with our family longer than James had been in my life. He was quiet, incredibly loyal to my father's memory, and knew the company inside and out. Every department, every deal, every secret. More importantly, I knew he loved and respected my father deeply, and he would see what James was doing as a betrayal of Dad's trust. I reached out to Daniel carefully, meeting him away from the office, away from the house. I told him my fears, what I'd observed, the things that didn't add up. He listened patiently, his face serious, his eyes showing understanding and concern. He agreed to help. He started looking into things for me, quietly, carefully, using his access and his knowledge without raising any suspicion. He found the hidden accounts James had set up, the shady deals being made, the way James was moving assets around, getting everything ready to cut me out completely and take over. He even found out about Samantha, the woman James was working with, not just a colleague, but his partner in this scheme, maybe more. The proof Daniel found was shocking, even though I had suspected something was wrong. It was worse than I thought. But finding it, holding the documents in my hand, seeing the clear evidence of James's betrayal, it also gave me power. It turned my fear and hurt into cold, hard determination. James thought he was so smart, so in control. He thought he could humiliate me in front of everyone, take everything my father built, and walk away clean, rich, and powerful. He thought I was weak, just a grieving widow who would sign whatever he put in front of her. He was wrong, so completely, utterly wrong. I wouldn't just survive this. I would fight back, and I would win. I started putting the pieces together, planning my move, the timing, the place. I knew I had to choose the right time, the right place. A place where everyone would see what kind of man James really was. A place where he couldn't lie his way out of it, where the truth would be undeniable. A place just like the party he was planning to celebrate our anniversary. His stage for my humiliation would become my stage for his downfall, and I would make sure it was a show no one would ever forget. Leaving that ballroom wasn't an act of flight, but of control. Each step away from the shocked buzz was a step towards my plan. The New York night breeze was cold, but the determination within me was afire. I knew the real battle hadn't been Mauricio's announcement, but what would come next? The public humiliation was just the trigger he pulled. The response I had prepared would be the explosion. As the party crumbled without its hostess, I headed for a car waiting discreetly on the side street. Pedro was inside, his face worried in the dark. He didn't need to ask. He knew. Pedro, my father, brought him into the company as a young office boy over 30 years ago. He grew up with the company, knew every corner, every process, every person. He was more than an employee. He was part of my family's history, and his loyalty to my father was unwavering. When I first approached him, hesitant at first, he listened with the seriousness I expected. His eyes hardened when I described my suspicions, Mauricio's strange movements, the unanswered questions. For Pedro, it was a betrayal not just to me, but to the legacy of Charles, the man he so admired. "Don't worry, Vivian," he said at that first secret meeting in a secluded cafe. "If he's doing what you think, we'll find out. Your father trusted me, and I trust you. We will honor his memory." And so began our silent, dangerous search. Pedro used his inside knowledge to access digital and physical files that Mauricio was trying to hide. He worked late, after most employees had left, or arrived before dawn. Each document he found, each suspicious bank transaction he tracked, was a piece in the puzzle of Mauricio's betrayal. He uncovered the network of shell companies Mauricio had created, offshore accounts where our company's money was slowly being siphoned. These were complex financial movements, designed to be almost impossible to trace without privileged access. Pedro knew where to look, which project codes to follow, which names to investigate. He found contracts signed by Mauricio selling valuable parts of the company for well below market value, with the money then disappearing. He discovered fraudulent loans taken out in the company's name, with the funds going directly into Mauricio's personal accounts, or these shell companies. The extent of the betrayal was breathtaking. It wasn't just about money. It was a complete takeover, meticulously planned while I was vulnerable. Mauricio didn't just want my money. He wanted my name, my inheritance, my father's empire. He wanted to erase my existence from the company's history and put himself in Charles's place. And Lorena? Pedro confirmed her involvement. She wasn't just a colleague. She was the financial architect behind many of the diversion schemes. She had a history of facilitating complex, opaque transactions for wealthy clients who wanted to hide their assets. She and Mauricio met at a business conference, and from what Pedro discovered, their partnership quickly became more than professional. There were exchanged emails, text messages, even hotel bookings that suggested an intimate relationship, all mixed with the cold, calculating details of how they would leave me with nothing. Lorena was as ruthless and ambitious as Mauricio, perhaps even more so. She saw the opportunity to become rich and powerful alongside him, stepping on me in the process. Pedro compiled everything: copies of documents, bank statements, company records, incriminating emails. He created a detailed, clear, and irrefutable report, outlining every step of Mauricio and Lorena's scheme. He worked with a trusted lawyer, Mr. Miller-esque, an expert in corporate and financial law, recommended by an old colleague of my father's, Mr. Miller reviewed the evidence, confirmed its validity, and prepared the necessary legal documents, not for a lengthy court battle, but for a direct confrontation, a legal ambush. The night of the party approached. I spent the last few days in a mix of tension and focus. I continued to act normally with Mauricio, maintaining the facade of an oblivious, carefree wife. Every smile I gave him was a calculated lie. Every casual conversation was a test of my own strength. I rehearsed the moment, the words, My posture. I couldn't falter. Everything depended on me appearing strong, informed, and in complete control. On the night of the party, as I greeted guests with a smile on my face, my mind was going over every detail of the plan. Pedro was in the mansion, discreetly, with Mr. Miller and a small team of private security guards the lawyer had hired. The evidence was secure, ready to be presented. The asset transfer agreement, the document that would give Mauricio a way out, a painful one, but a way out, in exchange for everything he stole, was drafted and ready to be signed. I knew it would be difficult, seeing people's reactions, facing the lie head-on. But the anger and the determination to honor my father and protect what was mine gave me the strength I needed. Mauricio thought he was humiliating me that night. He didn't know he was just opening the door to his own downfall. When I left the ballroom, the shocked silence I left behind quickly broke. I could imagine the murmurs starting, the whispered questions, the confused looks. No one expected that. Mauricio, certainly, didn't expect it. He expected tears, screams, a broken wife who would beg him to take it back. He expected to be the center of attention, the strong man making a difficult but necessary decision. My calm demeanor and words caught him completely off guard. While I was in the car with Pedro, driving to a nearby safe location, Mr. Miller went into action. He wasted no time. With the hostess's dramatic exit and Mauricio's perplexed silence, the moment was perfect. Mr. Miller, a middle-aged man with neatly trimmed gray hair and impeccable posture, walked confidently to where Mauricio was still standing, frozen by shock. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Miller's voice was clear and firm, cutting through the tense air. "I apologize for the interruption, but there is an urgent legal matter that needs to be resolved tonight. On behalf of my client, Vivian, I need to speak with Mauricio." Mauricio finally seemed to snap out of his trance, his face pale. He tried to regain his composure, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "A lawyer, Mr. Miller, I don't know what you're talking about. This is a personal, family matter." "No, Mauricio," Mr. Miller replied calmly, but with authority. "This stopped being a personal matter the moment you began siphoning millions of dollars from Vivian's family company, the company her father built and left to her. It stopped being personal when you secretly plotted to leave her with nothing, using her trust and her grief against her." Mr. Miller's words fell like bombs in the ballroom. The murmurs ceased completely. Now, the silence was one of pure astonishment and horror. Guests looked from Mauricio to Mr. Miller, trying to understand what was happening. Mauricio turned white as a sheet. His eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape, a denial that could sound convincing. "This is absurd," he stammered, his voice too loud, trembling. "He's lying. She's emotionally unstable. She doesn't know what she's saying." Mr. Miller was unfazed. He held a thick folder in his hands. "I assure everyone that Vivian is perfectly sane. And we have proof, irrefutable proof, bank documents, transfer records, fraudulent contracts, emails, all detailing your scheme, Mauricio, to steal Vivian's inheritance. We even have evidence of your partner, Lorena's, involvement in this fraud." Mentioning Lorena was another blow. Some guests who knew her, or who had seen her with Mauricio, looked around, searching for her. Lorena, realizing the plan had collapsed and her name had been dragged through the mud, had already discreetly disappeared from the party. Mr. Miller opened the folder and took out some documents, showing them to Mauricio. "We have everything here, Mauricio. The tracing of every dollar siphoned, every hidden asset. The fraud is clear, the evidence overwhelming." He placed the documents on a nearby table. "Now, you have two options." He paused, letting the words hang in the heavy air. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Mauricio, who seemed to shrink under the weight of their gazes. "Option 1. Mr. Miller continued, his voice grave. You sign this agreement. It immediately transfers back to Vivian all the assets you diverted, all the company shares you tried to take, and you renounce any future claim on her family's fortune. In return, Vivian agrees not to press criminal charges against you for fraud and theft. You leave here tonight, with your freedom, but without a penny of what you tried to steal, and with your reputation destroyed. But you avoid prison. Mauricio listened, his lips pressed into a thin line. The arrogance from before had completely vanished, replaced by cold fear. Option 2, Mr. Miller said, and his voice hardened. You don't sign. And tomorrow morning, we will present all this evidence to the authorities. You will face criminal charges for financial fraud, money laundering, and theft. You will spend many years in prison, and even if you somehow escaped prison, your reputation would be irrecoverably ruined. You would lose everything anyway, but in a much worse way. He pushed the agreement and a pen across the table. The choice is yours, Mauricio. Sign or face the consequences. I returned to the ballroom at this moment, entering silently. The attention was so focused on Mauricio and Mr. Miller that few noticed my arrival. I walked slowly to the table where they were, stopping beside Mr. Miller. Mauricio looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger, fear, and defeat. Vivian, he whispered, a last attempt to appeal to something that no longer existed. I looked at him, not with anger, but with a cold, distant calm. You thought I was weak, Mauricio, I said, my voice low but clear enough for him to hear. You thought grief would blind me forever. You thought I was just a pretty name and an easy inheritance to steal. You underestimated Charles's daughter. You underestimated the woman you swore to love. I gestured to the documents on the table. Sign. End this. You've already lost. You lost the moment you decided to break your promise, break my trust, and try to destroy everything my father built. Sign, and get out of my life. Mauricio stared at me for a long moment, searching for any sign of weakness, any hesitation. But there was none. Just the cold certainty in my eyes. He looked at the guests watching in silence, at Mr. Miller, at the evidence on the table. He knew he was cornered. There was no way out. With a trembling hand, he picked up the pen. The sound of the pen scratching on the paper in the tense silence of the ballroom seemed incredibly loud. He signed his name, sealing his own downfall. The sound of the pen stopped. Mauricio let out a heavy sigh, as if all the air had been sucked out of him. He raised his eyes and stared at me. There was no arrogance left, only bitter, empty defeat. He had lost everything he tried to steal, lost his reputation, lost the woman he underestimated. It is done, Mr. Miller said, carefully picking up the signed document. As agreed, there will be no criminal charges. However, from this moment on, you have no further connection to Vivian, nor to the company, nor to any of her family's assets. Our security will escort you out. Mauricio didn't argue. He no longer had the strength to fight. He just nodded slowly, looking years older than he had just minutes before. As the security guards approached, he took one last look around the ballroom, at the faces of the guests who had once admired him, now staring at him with contempt or pity. He turned and walked, shoulders slumped, out of the mansion, into the cold night, leaving behind the life he had tried to steal. The ballroom was silent for a moment after he left. The tension eased, replaced by a strange sense of relief and the need to process what had just happened. The guests, most of whom were longtime family friends or loyal business partners, began to approach me, some with tears in their eyes, others with expressions of support. My mother came up to me, hugging me tightly. "Vivian," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "I know, Mom," I said, my voice a little choked. Nobody knew. He was very good at hiding it. Pedro approached, his face showing a mixture of relief and pride. "You were amazing, Vivian," he said softly. "Your father would be so proud of you." A small smile appeared on my lips. "We did it, Pedro. Together. Your help was crucial. I will never forget your loyalty." "It was the right thing to do," he replied simply. "For Mr. Charles. And for you." As I talked with some of the remaining guests, who stayed to offer support, my mind wandered to Mauricio. Where would he go? What would he do? And Lorena? Far from the mansion, in a luxury apartment Mauricio likely paid for with the diverted money? Lorena waited. She was impatient, perhaps calling him, wanting to know what happened, why he hadn't returned to the party. When Mauricio finally arrived, the door opened to reveal Lorena, wearing a silk robe, a glass of wine in her hand. "Where have you been, Mauricio?" she asked, her voice slightly irritated. "Is the party over? What happened?" Mauricio walked into the apartment, looking like a ghost. He didn't answer immediately. He just collapsed into an armchair, his face in his hands. "Mauricio? What's wrong?" Lorena approached, realizing something was very wrong. "You look awful. Did it go well? Did you get it?" He slowly lifted his head, his eyes empty. "I lost, Lorena," he said, his voice hoarse. She knew. Vivian knew everything. She had proof, a lawyer, I had to sign. I lost everything. The company, the money, everything. Lorena's face hardened instantly. The concern vanished, replaced by cold, calculating fury. "You what? You signed." "You gave everything back," she shrieked, the wine glass trembling in her hand. "You idiot! How could you be so incompetent? I told you to be careful. I told you not to underestimate her." "She caught me by surprise," he yelled back, standing up. "She acted like she didn't know anything, and then she showed up with all the proof. What did you expect me to do? Go to jail?" "I expected you to be smarter," she retorted, her voice full of contempt. "I risked everything for you. My reputation, my career, and you mess it all up. You have nothing left. No money, no company, nothing." She stared at him with disgust. "You're useless to me now, Mauricio." She slammed the wine glass onto the table with a thud and started walking towards the bedroom. "Lorena, wait, where are you going?" he asked, desperate. "Away from you, of course," she said, without turning around. "You're a loser." "I don't stay with losers. Find someone else to clean up your mess." And with that, she went into the bedroom, and moments later, emerged with a suitcase. Without another word, without a backward glance, Lorena left the apartment, leaving Mauricio alone. He stood there, in the middle of the luxurious living room that was no longer his, looking at the closed door. In a few hours, he had lost his wife, the fortune he tried to steal, and the woman he plotted it with. He was alone, facing the emptiness of his own greed and failure. His fall was complete. Dawn arrived, painting the New York sky with soft shades of pink and orange. I was sitting in the mansion garden, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city wake up. The chaos of the night before seemed distant, almost unreal. The mansion was silent now. The tense energy of the party and the confrontation had dissipated. All that remained was the quiet and a feeling of freedom. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. The weight of the secret, the distrust, the pain of betrayal, all of it had been released the night before. It wasn't easy. It was painful in public, but it was necessary. I faced the lie head-on and exposed it. I protected what was mine. Pedro came to the garden, bringing a steaming cup of tea. He sat beside me in silence for a moment. "Good morning, Vivian," he said softly. "Good morning, Pedro. I replied, taking the cup. The warmth in my hands was comforting. What do we do now? He asked, looking at the mansion. Now, we rebuild, I said, looking at the horizon. We will clean up the mess Mauricio made. We will restore the company's integrity. We will honor my father's memory, not just by maintaining what he built, but by making it grow the right way. Later that morning, I had a meeting with Mr. Miller in his office. He confirmed that all the documents were in order. The asset transfer was legally secured. Mauricio had no further claims. The legal nightmare had ended as quickly as it began, thanks to the meticulous preparation and irrefutable evidence. You handled this with remarkable strength, Vivian, Mr. Miller said, closing the folder. Many people would have crumbled. You not only stood firm, but you also acted decisively to protect your assets and your family's legacy. I had no choice, I said, but I knew it wasn't entirely true. I had the choice to surrender, to accept defeat. But the memory of my father, the injustice of what Mauricio tried to do, propelled me. My next step was to return to the company. The headquarters felt different that day. There was a strange quietness, an uncertainty in the air. The employees knew something big had happened. Some looked at me with curiosity, others with sympathy, some with respect. I gathered everyone in the main auditorium. I stood on the stage, the same place where my father used to speak, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also a new confidence. Good morning, everyone, I began, my voice steady. As many of you know, last night was difficult. There was a significant betrayal by Mauricio, who attempted, fraudulently, to take control of this company, but he failed. I paused, letting the words sink in. The evidence has been presented, and he has signed a legal agreement renouncing all his claims. The company my father, Charles, built with such hard work and dedication, is safe. It belongs to the family, and more importantly, it belongs to all of us who work here and believe in its values. I looked at the faces in the audience, some relieved, others still shocked, but all attentive. I know the past few months have been uncertain, but that is over. Now, it is time to look forward. My vision for the future of this company is clear. We will restore the transparency, ethics, and integrity that my father always cherished. We will focus on growth, innovation, and the well-being of our employees. This company has always been more than just numbers. It is a community, a family. I felt a wave of positive energy coming from the audience. People began to applaud, an applause that started hesitantly and grew, strong and genuine. It was an applause of relief, of hope, of renewed trust. In that moment, I realized how much I had grown. The Vivian who married Mauricio, the Vivian who was lost in grief, no longer existed. The pain and the betrayal transformed me, forced me to find a strength I didn't know I possessed. I learned that true strength is not in never falling, but in getting up after falling, stronger and wiser. I looked to the future, to the challenges that would come, rebuilding trust, repairing financial damage, leading the company. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. I was no longer the protected heiress. I was the leader, forged in adversity, ready to build my own legacy on the solid foundations my father left. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to walk it. Conclusion. The journey from public humiliation to full recovery was long and painful, but it taught me the most important lesson of my life, my own strength. I was betrayed by the one I loved and trusted most, but instead of being destroyed, I found the courage to fight for what was mine and for my father's memory. This story is a reminder that even in the darkest moments, when it feels like everything is lost, we have a reserve of inner strength we can access. Betrayal can break your heart, but it doesn't have to break your spirit. Use the pain as fuel to rise again, stronger and more determined than ever. If you have gone through something similar, or if this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming and transformation. Your strength is within you. Never forget that.